Welcome to Walking Tour of Italy, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in Italy with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination, from ancient ruins and stunning gardens to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible country. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore Italy. You're standing in the heart of Ferrara in the flat, misty plain of Emilia-Romagna, and there is something in front of you that most visitors simply don't expect. They've heard of Ferrara, this quiet, bicycle-friendly UNESCO city with its medieval streets and Renaissance palaces, but nothing quite prepares you for the moment you round a corner and come face to face with the Castello Estense. 4 massive towers rise above a water-filled moat. Red brick walls stretch between them, crowned now not with battlements but with elegant white marble balustrades that catch the morning light. 3 drawbridges lead to the entrance, and as you stand here looking up, you realize this place was built to say something very specific. Power lives here and power endures. This castle is one of the most complete and magnificent medieval fortress-turned-Renaissance palaces in all of Italy. And today, we're going inside. Take a moment before you cross the drawbridge. Notice the moat. It's still filled with water, green and still, reflecting the towers above. This was not decorative. When the first stone was laid here on September 29th, 1385, the moat was part of a survival strategy. Just weeks before, the city had erupted in violent revolt. The people of Ferrara, crushed under heavy taxation, had turned on their ruler with genuine fury. The Marquis, shaken but calculating, immediately commissioned a fortress, not just a stronghold, but a statement. The fortress was designed by an architect named Bartolino da Novara, who built it fast and built it formidably. The message to the people of Ferrara was clear. You can be angry, but you cannot reach us. Now cross the drawbridge and pass through the entrance. You're stepping into the courtyard, the Cortile d'Onore, and already the character of the place shifts. This is no longer purely a fortress, it's a world. The stone courtyard is quieter than the streets outside, and the towers rise on all 4 corners, each one named the Torre dei Leoni, the Lion's Tower, where we'll climb later, the Torre Marchesana, also called the Clock Tower, the Torre di Santa Caterina, and the Torre di San Paolo to the southwest. For centuries, this courtyard was frescoed. Portraits of Este ancestors, real and legendary, covered the walls. Most of it is gone now, but fragments survive under the portico, enough to hint at the ambition. The Este family had ruled Ferrara since the 12th century, and by the time this castle was built, they had perfected the art of projecting authority through beauty. Over the decades and then the centuries that followed, they transformed this fortress into something extraordinary, adding marble balconies, rooftop terraces, a hanging garden, and gilded painted rooms that rivaled the courts of Florence and Milan. The fortress never stopped being a fortress, but it also became a palace and then a cultural center, and then a legend. Let's go downstairs first. The dungeons of this castle are not theatrical, they are real and they hold real stories. You descend a staircase and the air changes immediately. Cooler, closer, the corridors narrow, and almost at once you find yourself outside the cell of a man named Giulio. He was an illegitimate son of a duke, half-brother to the ruling Alfonso I, handsome, charming, and dangerous in the way that younger brothers of rulers often are. A dispute arose over a woman's eyes, of all things, a noblewoman who allegedly preferred Giulio's gaze to that of his brother Ippolito. Ippolito, furious and proud, had Giulio's eyes attacked, blinded in revenge for being more beautiful. Giulio, understandably, plotted. He conspired with another brother Ferrante to overthrow the duke. The conspiracy was discovered. Their allies were executed. But for Giulio and Ferrante, the sentence was imprisonment, the castle's generosity of a kind, though it hardly felt that way. Look at the cell door. It is low and narrow. Inside, the space is barely large enough to stretch in. Ferrante died in that darkness. Giulio did not. He survived 53 years in this castle's prison, finally released in 1559 when he was 81 years old. He emerged, blinking into a city he no longer recognized, ruled by people who had not yet been born when he was locked away. It is one of the most staggering stories of endurance and cruelty in Renaissance Italy. A steep stairway leads up from here to another set of cells, and this is where the castle's most famous tragedy unfolded. These are the rooms where two young people, a stepson and his father's young wife, were held before they were executed in 1425, more than a century before the conspiracy of the brothers, yet somehow even more haunting. The Marquis was considerably older than his second wife, a woman named Parisina Malatesta who came to Ferrara as a teenager. He had a son from a previous relationship, Ugo, also young, also trapped in the gilded cage of court life. The two fell in love. For a while, no one knew, or perhaps people suspected and looked away. But the Marquis discovered them, and his response was merciless. A rapid trial and then beheading, not just of the two lovers, but of every adulterous woman in the city. According to some accounts, a mass punishment carried out in a single furious night. Look up at Ugo's cell ceiling. Prisoners once wrote words here using the smoke of candles. You can still see traces. No one knows exactly what was written, but knowing that hands reached up to leave those marks, that someone in the darkness wanted to leave some trace of themselves, is almost impossible to take in. Come back up into the light. As you make your way up the ramp, once used to haul artillery into the upper floors, now a gentle incline paved in brick, you cross from one world into another. The dungeons behind you, the state apartments ahead. This is the Piano Noble, and the contrast is breathtaking. Step into the gallery and the adjacent rooms, and you are immediately surrounded by color. The ceilings are frescoed, the walls painted, the floors original to the Este period. These rooms were created for the business and pleasure of a Renaissance court at the height of its power, and they still look the part. The Sala del Governo, the government room, was created for Duke Ercole II in the 16th century, and its ceiling is among the most impressive of its kind in Italy. Gilded and painted panels, recessed into lacunars, depict mythological scenes. In the center oval, the myth of Pan unfolds, surrounded by other mythological forms. The whole composition was meant to be read as a celebration of the ruler and his just governance. It worked then, it still works now. You find yourself looking up and up, your neck aching, unable to stop. Move through to the rooms known for games and dawn. The Sala dell'Aurora, the Chamber of Dawn, has a ceiling frescoed with the arrival of morning. A room meant for those first hours of the day when the court was waking and the light came gently through tall windows. And then the game rooms, painted with scenes of ancient athletics, wrestling, stone throwing, gladiatorial contests, a bacchanal on one long wall, scenes of children playing in the style of ancient Rome. Alfonso II ordered these rooms for evening entertainment, concerts, card games, and conversation under ceilings that made everything feel slightly mythological. One room you should not miss is the small chamber the guides sometimes call the Saletta dei Veleni, the Chamber of Poisons. The name alone stops people cold. It was originally used, apparently, by court pharmacists to prepare medicines. The word apparently carries a certain weight in a place like this. The Este family, like all powerful Renaissance dynasties, had their share of suspected poisonings, unresolved deaths, and convenient illnesses. Whether this particular room was ever used for anything darker than herbal remedies is unknown. But the name has stuck, and standing in it, you understand why. Before we climb the tower, step out into the Giardino degli Aranci, the Garden of the Oranges. This is a hanging garden, elevated above street level, suspended between the castle's walls on a terrace with a view over Ferrara's rooftops. Alfonso I commissioned it, and it was reconstructed with orange trees, roses, and aromatic herbs. The scent in spring is extraordinary. From here, the ladies and courtiers of the Este court could walk and talk and breathe evening air, invisible to the city below. There is something of that privacy still, a sense of being apart, elevated, looking out over a world that cannot quite see you. If you can, come here early in the morning. The light on the orange trees, the quiet of the city not yet fully awake, the moat reflecting the walls below. It is worth a separate entry just to stand here. Now we climb. The Torre dei Leoni, the Lion's Tower, is the oldest of the four and the one that rewards the most effort. The climb is about 120 steps, narrow and spiraling, and it earns you the only truly panoramic view over Ferrara that exists above street level. When you emerge at the top and turn to face the city, the scale of what you're looking at becomes clear in an instant. Ferrara stretches before you in all directions, flat and orderly and medieval, and Renaissance all at once. You can see the cathedral to the south, the pink and white marble facade of the Duomo, part Romanesque, part Gothic. To the north, the great boulevards of the Addizione Erculea, the Herculean addition, the Renaissance urban planning project that doubled the size of the city in the late 15th century and made Ferrara one of the most ambitious urban experiments in European history. Nicholas Copernicus studied here. Lucrezia Borgia walked these streets. Poets competed for the favor of the court. The poet Ariosto wrote his great chivalric epic here, set in a world of knights and enchantresses, drawn from a city where the line between legend and politics was never quite clear. Look north along the main boulevard. That wide, straight street lined with palaces is the spine of the Renaissance addition. At its far end, invisible from here but worth seeking out, is the Palazzo dei Diamanti. Its facade covered in hundreds of diamond-shaped stone points that catch the light differently at every hour of the day. It now houses one of Ferrara's finest art galleries. The extra €2 to climb this tower is among the best €2 you will spend in Italy. Come back down slowly. There is more to see in the castle. The ducal chapel, commissioned for Renée de France, daughter of the French king and wife of Ercole II, a woman who sheltered Protestant reformers at a time when that was genuinely dangerous, whose chapel is a quiet and surprisingly moving space. The rooms decorated during the papal period after the Este family lost Ferrara to Rome in 1598, and the castle became the seat of cardinal legates, the ceiling painting that narrates that very moment of loss, with the last Este Duke riding away on horseback as the cardinal's men arrive. That painting is worth pausing in front of. The Este ruled Ferrara for nearly 4 centuries, longer than most dynasties in Italian history. And then, for the lack of a legitimate heir, the whole thing ended. The city was handed over. The family retreated to Modena. Ferrara, which had been one of the most brilliant courts in Renaissance Europe, became a provincial backwater almost overnight. It stayed that way for centuries, which is partly why it survived. The grand avenues were never torn down. The walls were never dismantled. The castle was bought by the province after Italian unification and eventually opened to the public. It stands now exactly as it stood then, moat, towers, drawbridges and all. Before you leave, stand once more in the courtyard. Let the scale of it settle. This place held lovers and prisoners, poets and poison makers, cardinals and cannon, the laughter of court games and the silence of condemned cells. It is one of those buildings that contains more human experience per square meter than almost anywhere else in Italy. Now, when you step back out across the drawbridge, you'll find the rest of Ferrara waiting, and it deserves more than a hurried glance. Just a short walk south from the castle, the cathedral facade rises in a combination of Romanesque lower arches and Gothic upper carvings that one chronicler called an illustrated Bible in stone. Take time to walk its full length along the side, past the rows of carved animals and biblical scenes. The attached Museo della Cattedrale holds painted panels and marble reliefs that were once part of the original church. From the cathedral, head east toward Via delle Volte, one of the most atmospheric streets in Ferrara. A long medieval lane covered in arches where merchants once stored their goods, and where today, especially at dusk, you feel the city as it must have felt 500 years ago. It's narrow, slightly dark, and entirely original. If you have the energy, walk north along Corso Ercole I, the main boulevard of the Renaissance addition, all the way to the Palazzo dei Diamanti. The walk itself is a pleasure. Wide, lined with palaces, nearly free of cars. Ferrara is famously a cycling city, and you'll share the path with residents moving quietly about their day on bicycles, which is perhaps the most Ferrarese thing you can imagine. For lunch or dinner, Osteria La Compagnia is a small, beloved restaurant a few minutes' walk from the castle toward Piazza Sacrati. It's tucked into an old wooden and stone space with a casual, welcoming atmosphere, and the pumpkin-stuffed pasta, cappellacci di zucca, is exactly what you should order. It's the defining dish of Ferrara, handmade with butter and sage, and here it is done beautifully. Reserve ahead. The place is small and popular. For a wine bar with serious pedigree, make your way to Al Brindisi just beside the cathedral. It claims to be the oldest osteria in the world, established in 1435, And while that claim is impossible to fully verify, the atmosphere makes you want to believe it. Copernicus drank here, according to local tradition. The wine list is excellent, the Capellacci di Succa is good, and a glass of local Bosco Eliseo white wine with a view of the cathedral costs almost nothing and tastes exactly right. Just across from the castle, Ca de Frera is another solid choice. A traditional Ferrarese kitchen where the salama da sugo, a local spiced pork sausage, makes an appearance, and where the menus lean heavily on the honest, generous cooking of Emilia-Romagna. And if you find yourself on Via delle Volte with an appetite, Antica Osteria delle Volte at the far end of that medieval street offers excellent fresh pasta in one of the most romantic settings in the city. Reserve well ahead for dinner. Ferrara rewards the unhurried visitor. Unlike Florence or Venice, there are no overwhelming crowds here, no jostling for position, no sense that you need to rush. The city moves at its own pace, by bicycle, on foot, through quiet squares and long, straight avenues. The castle is the center of it all, the anchor around which everything else orbits, but the city that grew up around it and the court that once animated it are still very much present if you know where to look. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring Italy. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond Italy, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next walk.